So I've had a few people ask about Steam VR input, and I've wanted to put together this guide um, so that you guys have an easier time dealing with this. Do keep in mind that whenever you override the defaults, you don't get the updates from the game unless you go back and activate those defaults. So I'll be continually updating these bindings based on player feedback to help with things like dead zones, controller drift, and things that feel more comfortable for certain controller profiles than others. So if you override these and you set these up, um, it's not going to go back and apply the defaults. You'll have to go manually activate those. For your thumbstick settings, this doesn't really matter. So you can WMR people, if you guys want to be around 10% to fix those controller drift issues where you're automatically walking around. This thumbstick's dead zone is independent of the binding, so you don't have to worry about that. You can set this, it'll work for every game. So any other game you're having a drift issue with, it'll correct it for you. So this is just for that. And you can use these calibrate thumbsticks to kind of help out with some of your sensitivity if you need to. But I wanted to go over bindings, and the first thing you'll want to do is show the advanced settings, right? The other thing is you'll want to make sure that you're set up this way so that whenever you get done binding for your Cosmos, you'll be able to export that file and send it to me, and I can apply it to the game as defaults, since Steam and Unreal Engine don't really have a way for me to do that without the Cosmos HMD. It was there for WMR. I don't have a WMR HMD, but you'll see that here in a second. So if we go to Manage Controller Bindings and I pick Drop In, and then I hit Custom here, and it doesn't matter. I'm on Index Controller, but it doesn't matter which one, right? And go to Edit This Binding. It's going to automatically shove you out into like Legacy or crap. I went back too far. Go back to Drop In. It's going to automatically shove you into either Legacy or some kind of local changes file, usually on the index. And on the Oculus, it's gonna do the same thing. It's gonna kick you out into like some legacy Oculus settings. Usually, you have to go and view the official bindings down here. And for a Cosmos, you're not gonna have any official bindings. So I'm just gonna open up the touch, which is gonna be closer to what it is you're going to be editing for your controller. So you'll create a brand new binding here, but I'm going to open this up and edit it so that you can see what you're going to need. So on the left hand side, we have the trigger binding for trigger L, and it's a click. And it's the same thing for the right. It's a click for trigger R. And the way you would do this for you when you go to create new binding, it's just going to bring you in here, right? You would click this little pencil here, and at that section of click, you would click there, and then you would select the trigger L, right? And then you're pretty much done with that part. There isn't much else on the trigger settings as far as how it's going to behave, as far as thresholds or anything like that, right? If you feel that it's not actuating the gun or it's not properly behaving with your triggers the way you want it to, you can change this to a button, and then you could adjust the dead zone thresholds, and we'll get into that in a second. The second thing you'll want to do for triggers, you'll want to set up a pull rate for your throttle. So for the touch controllers and the index controllers, you grip the steering wheel with the grip button, which will probably feel pretty good with the Cosmos too, since you have a pretty ergonomic controller and it doesn't take a lot of stress to hold that button. So you'll want to probably set this up the same way for your controller. The throttle is going to be the trigger for the vehicle when you're gripping it. So you'll want to do a pull and you'll want to do vehicle throttle, and that should be done. You don't have to have any kind of thresholds on that. You'll want to do joystick click for sprint. That seems to work pretty good on the Cosmos, and that's all it is. It's just a click input button for sprint. You'll want to do controller movement position for a binding on the joystick. And you don't have to really do anything with the dead zone if you want to manage it globally inside of the thumbstick settings. But you can go into the settings here and bump that threshold up or down. So there's that for controller movement. And then you'll need motion controller left axes, and this is for HMD orientation, basically. So we have two options. We have controller orientation, HMD orientation. So you need both of these bound. It also does things for the vehicle as well. So that's the reason why there's two. This is axis values. This is the fact that you've actually passed the threshold for controller movement. Grip L is a click set up that way on the touch. And I want to say you can set it up similarly, and then it gives you thresholds to play with, right? So if you don't want to set the grip up as a click, then you can set it up as a button as well, and it'll give you thresholds. So you'll have to figure out what feels better for you on the Cosmos, but I'm pretty sure your grips are binary. There's no analog. It's either on or off. So you should be good here with just setting it up as a click or a button. Then you'll have laser beam left and laser beam right. So this is just going to be on the Cosmos. You'll want to set up one of your buttons. I think Y and B are set up on the Oculus. So it's the top button. And the index is the same thing. It's the top button. And then on the Vive, it's the system button, which ends up being at the top of those controllers. So it's basically a miscellaneous button. This is going to pull up your tablet on the left controller, and on the right it's going to pull up a laser for you to manipulate the tablet or start a single player game, do that kind of thing. On the right controller, the only thing that you're going to have to do that's different is you'll want to set up your snap right and snap left if you use snap turn. These are going to be touch for the mode, and they're going to be set up as uses D-pad. And you're going to want to make sure that your overlap percentage and your dead zone percentages are reasonable for your snap, so 50 and 25. And then your jump, you're going to want to make sure you really adjust that. So you want that dead zone on your jump to be way up, like 75%. And then you're going to want your overlap to be low. So you don't want to accidentally jump when you're snapping. So that is the only exception for dead zone type settings for drop-in. And you'll want to do your motion controller right for your joystick here. Controller movement right for joystick. Grip R, laser beam right. So it's the same thing as you see on the left with the exception of snap, turn, and jump. Pretty much. And that's how you're going to set up those Cosmos bindings. When you're done with that, you should have an export binding file button down here. If you export that and send it to me, I can set up a default binding for the Cosmos, and then everyone with a Cosmos will be able to use that default binding. And be able to just hop in and play. So I hope this helps out. If you guys have any additional questions, just get back with me. If you ever want to, like, say you do go in and custom set up bindings for your controller profile, and then you want to go back to the defaults, they'll be listed down here, and you just hit activate on them. So even though I was editing this out, creating my own binding for the Oculus Touch, I just backed out, went back to the bottom, and hit activate on the default, and it's good to go. So Vive 1, same thing. If I was to hit edit, it would create my own and drop the default down here. Index is the same thing. It's going to have my current bindings, which I went in and made some local changes. And because I want to continue to get the updates that get pushed out, I'm going to hit activate on that. The other's going to go away. And now anytime the developer, me, makes a change, it'll get pushed out to the default bindings. So it's probably a good idea once I push out a default for Cosmos. I'll just use what you set up, whoever it is that has the Cosmos. I'll push that out, and then you can swap to that default. Then if a suggestion is made in Discord or whatever, you'll continue to get those. Y'all have a good one.